Hey everybody, good morning. It is day 126 of spiritual healthcare. Welcome. We're in a pretty crazy week this week, especially last night. The election began, and there is, I think, a lot of anxiety, a lot of turmoil, a lot of upset over what is going on or what might happen, and whatnot. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, as well as what we can do to move forward. And also, on top of that, a very great question that came in the other day, which I can't wait to share with you guys. And because it's not only a ghost story, a moving story, but it's also a really great question and a spooky encounter. And we're going to try to unwrap this today and figure out what exactly happened and maybe get this question answered. So good morning, everyone. It is good to see you. Good morning to Dan and Ed. Nice to see all of you. It is a really beautiful sunny day here in Edmonton. We still don't have snow. I just got back from Vancouver and it was just as nice in Vancouver, which was lovely. So I hope you guys had a really good week. I hope you had an amazing Halloween. Good morning. Good morning to Jeff. Nice to see you. I hope you guys had a great Halloween. I hope you celebrated. I hope you had fun. It was neat because I wasn't far from English Bay on Halloween in BC. And they spent 2 days lighting up with fireworks. 2 days. It was really cool. It was so nice to see everybody celebrating. I think it's so important right now. And I went for a walk last night, and everybody's now putting up their Christmas lights and stuff. So more than usual. It's really cool. So good morning, everybody. And as I say, we got a great question today, a great ghost story that I think has a lot of potential to draw conversation, and I think it's really, really good. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to I also want to get into the concept of, or some concepts I think that can help you guys through this next week, because we honestly don't know what's going on in terms of the election and the immediate future and things like that. So I wanted to introduce to you guys some concepts that you guys could sort of take and play with and think about a little bit. So one of the things that we've talked about throughout spiritual healthcare has been the idea that what we think, what we receive, what we think, what we are, how we feel is what ends up being projected into the world, right? And we get what we think about. We get the expectations we have. We get the mirror of our own fears, our own joy, whatever that is for us, right? We are the operators of this universe that we get to play in. We can't control other people's reality, but we can control our own reality. And our circumstances that are around us don't dictate to us the level in which we can manifest and create in our own experience. So I wanted to remind everybody today that what we are telling ourselves going into the next number of days is so crucially important. That what is going on circumstantially is not dictating your own thriving. It just isn't. And the problem is, if our words to ourselves are scarce, your vision will be dim. I guarantee you, your vision will be dim. And if we are unable to quiet our minds, unable to receive thought, find the emotions, get to the energy that we want, our vision starts to get muddy. It's almost like if you've got a glass of water and you've got dirt in the bottom of the glass, and you're pouring water in, and all that dirt is coming up. And that water that's coming in, if you've got that negative thought going on, starts to stir up more negative thoughts, right? It starts to come to the surface, which is a lot of what creates anxiety and all sorts of things like that. So as I say, if our head is empty of the positive reassurance, the thoughts, the stuff, our go-to experiences that bring us joy, we can't have a vision. We lose the vision, and then the negative stuff starts to blur what's going on in front of us, and we start to see things through a filter that's full of that dirt. So here's the crux of this problem. Okay, whenever you've got a fish, if you've got a dead fish, anybody that is a cook will probably know this, is that the fish tends to stink from the head to the tail, not the other way around. Doesn't stink from the tail to the head, it rots from the head downwards. So as soon as that head comes off, there is a shift in authority in real life. And so if we don't have the right thinking process up here, what ends up happening is that everything else that we dictate in our experience will be seen and manifested through that filter. So if we've got the rot of negative thought, of upset, of that we're allowing to fester, we're all going to have negative thoughts, we're all going to have fear. But if we're allowing that to fester and take root and start to rot, it will rot from the head down, and it will end up stinking up every possible manifestation. Every little bit of well-being will end up being just cut off from ourselves. So we really have to pay attention to that. And as I was saying, that when the head comes off, there is a shift in authority in anywhere. So not only does this apply to work or, governments or whatever, it applies to you as well. When we start to lose our head, we start to lose the authority of what we are projecting, what is occurring in our experience. If we can't think and receive the thoughts, we won't know where to go. It's so important that we keep ourselves clear during this time period. And we have to start asking ourselves, that is what we are doing, is what you are doing right now with your thinking, with your creation, is it working? Is it working? Because people have a weird tendency to be loyal to ineffectiveness. And the reasons why I think sometimes it's comfortable for people, but we tend to kind of date effectiveness, but we kind of marry ineffectiveness, right? So we sort of have these weird little rendezvous back and forth with effectiveness, but we tend to stay loyal to the things that aren't working. And we've really got to stop that in the time period, especially in the next week or so here coming forward. If the thoughts that you are choosing are not making you happy, calm, content, at peace, you got to change what you're doing. You have to change that dialogue. And as I say, it has to do with the authority that you're going to have over your life experience, because we have to remember what we do, what we say, we get to choose our own thriving. It is not up to anybody else. It's not up to the government. It's not up to the people around us. We get to choose. The universe is full of a myriad of possibilities that it can line up with literally anything in the world. We can create miracles, and we have to remember that. Whenever that with which has lost its head, that which is will come into power. Every time. Every single time. We get to choose what it is. How are we going to govern our life experience going forward? You get to choose. So I wanted to cover that with you guys a little bit. But I've got a fantastic question that came in from Jessica, because I think this is such a cool story. It's such a cool ghost story, but at the same time, I think there's so many lessons in here regarding all of this. So check this out. So she had said, when I was a young girl, my grandma, my adopted guardian, and I were sleeping in the living room. I was on the couch and my grandma was sleeping in the recliner. The reason was my grandpa just got back from the hospital from having a bad seizure. So we slept in the living room in case he needed anything. So put your investigative hats on, people. Here we go. These are all clues. We're leading up. In the middle of the night, my dog woke us both up, growling and barking viciously at a black figure that was standing at the end of the living room, in front of our love seat couch. The figure looked like it was walking towards my bedroom at the time and stopped dead in its tracks and looked our way. The living room was dark. As I was up fully to see what was happening, I noticed the black figure looked just like my older sister. I got excited and ran over to hug the black figure, thinking it was my sister, and ran right through it and landed on the love seat couch. My dog continued growling and barking. Meanwhile, I'm frozen in fear, unable to grasp what had just happened. My grandma immediately turned on the light and said, "What's going on?" As soon as the light came on, the black figure was gone, and my dog quit barking and growling. My grandma never saw anything. And the question is, why would a black figure take on the shape of her sister? Why could the dog see it and her see it and my grandma could not? Why was it in the room? and why would it make itself known at that point in time? So this is a great question. It's a great story, and a really great encounter, very powerful encounter. And it's stuff like this we really don't forget. So let's break this down, because all the clues were there. I'm thinking probably some of the people that have attended spiritual healthcare enough will be able already to pick out some of the reasons as to why this has occurred, because all the clues are there. So right away, when I hear a story like this from a client, from somebody emailing in, immediately we start to look at what was going on at the time. So what was going on emotionally at the time? Where was the, we've got an encounter here where, obviously we've got a black figure that the dog was responding to in a very negative way. It was frightening. So immediately that somewhere along the line, this came from not such a good place, right? We've got a series of traumas that have happened that have already been listed, which was, of course, the grandfather's seizure. There's stress, that there's worry going on as to what his health will be. There's been an emergency, so there's been stressors, right? So that's one of the things that we automatically start to look for. The second thing we start to look for is things like witnesses. Okay, how were they reacting? How were people feeling at the time? And the dog was a great indicator that he was upset. He was barking, growling, snarling at whatever it was. It was not recognizing the dog, the image or the entity as a sister, right? And that can be a really, really great indicator as to what this exactly was. So many times, over the years, I've dealt with animal cases, not only my own animals, but in other people's lives. And when the animal sees an entity that is truly the person that they were. So, for example, a loved one, a sister, a brother, a friend, someone that they knew in life, they will still respond in kind in that way to that person. So, for example, my little snake Galen, every once in a while my dad will come in and out and visit, and I don't see him, but I know who it is based on Galen's reaction. His reaction is so strong, and he gets so excited, and he's so thrilled and happy to see him that it becomes very blatant that he knows who this person is. So when you get an animal that is automatically reacting differently to something that appears to look like a sister or something like that, the animal's picking up on something else, and which usually means something's not jiving there. So now let's take a look at the entire case. So we've got we've got stressors going on in the home. We've got stressors with close family members. The stress is still happening, even though the grandfather's home from the hospital. It's still a worry. That's a traumatic incident. The dog is probably stressed as well because he knows something's going on. And then all of a sudden we get this appearance of this black entity, right? So when we look at that on the emotional scale, and you've got at one end, all the positive stuff on that radio frequency, and then on the other end, you've got all the kind of negative emotion, right? And we look at it like a radio dial. So if you're up here and you're tuned into joy and passion and contentment and fun, then you get basically what you're reflected back. You're reflected back the things that are in sequence with that frequency. So you get the experiences of the sister and the brother or friend, or just positive spirits that are coming through and having fun. When you've got stressors going on, when you're upset, when you're fearful, and you're at the other end of that emotional scale, then you end up with things that match up with that negative end of the emotional scale. You end up receiving maybe frightening images, or negative entities, or entities that are resonating with the idea of fear or stress or trauma. And animals feel it, because animals, they don't sit in that frequency. They are not in turmoil and upset and things like that most of the time. They usually have a pretty good bead on what's right and what doesn't feel right. So they pick up on negative entities very quickly, and they'll tend to bark and growl and get upset. So I think what we've got here is, all in all, to try to answer all of your questions about it at once, Jess. I think you've got a situation where you had a physical experience and trauma go on in the space. Everybody was sitting in that, obviously more negative end of that emotional radio dial, that emotional frequency. And the entity that ended up being in line with that responded to that, is something that came in briefly. And as soon as you guys got back up that emotional scale, you were off of its radar, you were tuned into something else, and that negative entity disappears. So the way this works, and the way hauntings and things like that work, is that you can be in negative emotion and have trauma or have something like that go on. And then once you begin to start to feel better, you fall out of range of that negative experience and that negative frequency. Just like if you were to tune a radio dial into a new channel, you find a way to get back off of the negative frequency and tune in to a new station with more positive things, which is oftentimes what seems to happen when we get a negative entity or negative haunting, and then you get people who move back up that emotional scale and the haunting seems to disappear, or new people move into the house and the haunting isn't there. It's because they're on a different frequency. So the ability to move off that frequency, and all of a sudden that entity doesn't reoccur, it doesn't come back. Sometimes the reason, you mentioned that this dark figure appeared somewhat like your sister, kind of looked that way, is not uncommon either. Sometimes what you'll get is negative entities that will bluff an identity or a shape or a person that we know, in order to kind of fit into the space. I dealt with a case very recently where one of the entities would actually become what looked like one of the house owner's dogs. They had 2 dogs at the time, and they would occasionally see a third one running around with the other 2 dogs, except it didn't look right. It was off. Like, it had weird features. It was not an actual dog, but the entity noticed that they were getting a lot of attention, so it became one of this third dog that kind of wandered around the house. It was very creepy. It was very, very creepy. But so we'll get these sort of bluff identities that show up over and over and over again, and sometimes that's what'll happen. But that, I think, is my take on this, is that you guys dipped into that negative end of the emotional spectrum. You were hanging out there for a while, and just long enough that something within the range, and who knows, it could have been in the house, it could have been from somewhere else, doesn't really matter, wandered into your experience. You had the experience with it, and as soon as you got up the emotional scale, it disappeared and you never saw it again. And I think that's essentially what happened. And it happens often. It happens often. And people always beat themselves up for it. They always think to themselves, well, I'm supposed to be, I should have done better, or I should have been more positive, or I should have, that's just not the way this works. And we're going to have those moments. There's going to be trauma in our lives. There's going to be things that happen. There's going to be things that drag us to the negative end of the emotional spectrum. It's just going to happen. And as we start to understand that and embrace it, because embracing it is really important, we can start to accept the fact that, yeah, there's contrast. And guess what? On the other end of that contrast is the thing that we want, is the emotions that we want. So as long as we are just ready and prepared to deal with the negative stuff, we can start to work our way back up that emotional scale and into a place where we're receiving better. And sometimes that's not overnight. It's not in 10 minutes. It's not overnight. Sometimes it can take weeks. Sometimes it can take months, depending on what the issue was, depending on what the trauma was. That's why when I'm dealing with clients and I've got them on the Teaching the Living program, I say, they'll say, well, how long is it going to take to work? Well, it's not a matter of how long. It's really up to you. It's up to your healing. It's up to your pace. It's how much you want to get better, how much you want to feel better. And that's really what it comes down to. How willing are you to put up with negative emotion? Are you willing to dig into it, to get your hands dirty, to clean it up properly in order to let it go and be able to move up to the more positive end of the emotional scale, and not just put a happy face sticker over the empty gas gauge? So many of us do that, and that sort of false and toxic positivity doesn't help anything. You can't really fake it. You've got to be able to at least clean up what you've got and then move forward. But one thing I always tell people about cleaning this stuff up, and I tell all my clients, is that give yourself a timeline. Give yourself a timeline, because you don't want to end up in a situation where you are cutting yourself off from living your world in order to clean stuff up, because that can be one of the worst things on the planet. You don't want to be doing that. You want to be able to give yourself a time period during the day. Maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's 20 minutes, to work on what you need to work on, clean up your stuff, cry your brains out if you need to, and then be able to turn around and go and do something positive for yourself. Go for a walk, get out, go do something. And know that you can put that down and come back to it maybe the next day, maybe the day after, and get your stuff cleaned up. But it doesn't have to consume your experience. It really doesn't. So as I say, the reason why I think all of this ties in, and why this story ties in, and right back to what we were talking about before, is that if our word is scarce, if what we're telling ourselves is scarce, then our vision is dim. So what we are telling ourselves, if we lose control of our head, if we lose control of the ability to be quiet and receive thought, receive inspiration, then we end up losing the authority we have over ourselves. We can't control the authority necessarily outside of us. We can control the authority that's within us, that receiving mode, and what we are interacting with non-physical energy. And not only just with the paranormal, but with everyday manifestations, day-to-day manifestations, because nothing comes out of the blue, guys. Nothing comes out of the blue. There's always a lead up. There's always a lead up. And even in cases like this, when, you know, it seems like all of a sudden this entity just shows up out of nowhere and then you know, disappears as quick as it came. When you start to look at the pieces, you realize it didn't come out of the blue. There was a lead up to what happened. And with most things in our lives, we can look back and figure it out. Sometimes it's hindsight 2020, but the more we do this, the more we start to understand that we are truly the creators of our reality. We start to pick out these little bits and pieces of hints and clues within our own vibration, within our own thoughts, that are precursors and warnings, those emotions that go, oh, that doesn't feel very good, I better clean this up. And once we start to realize that, we realize we're not going to be able to pout our way out of this. We can't whine our way out of this. We have to have the ability to be able to manage our thinking, to understand that when we start on that negative spiral, that we have the power to stop it. And it doesn't have anything to do with anything going on outside of ourselves. It really is about what's going on with us. So I found a great passage today that I wanted to read you guys from Ask and It Is Given, because I think there's some powerful words from the wonderful Abraham Hicks in here that I think will help everybody going into this week. So check this out, you guys. Love this. See yourself where you are now, as the beneficiary of the powerful stream of well-being. Try to imagine that you are basking in the flow of this powerful stream. Make an effort to feel yourself as the leading edge beneficiary of this unlimited stream, and smile and try to accept that you are worthy of it. Your ability to feel your worthiness of the powerful stream of well-being will undoubtedly depend on what is happening in your life right now. Under some conditions, you will feel utterly blessed, and others you will feel not so blessed. And it's our desire that as you read this, you will come to understand that to the degree you feel blessed and expect good things to flow to you, this indicates the level of your state of allowing. And to the degree that you do not feel blessed, where you do not expect good things to come to you, this indicates your degree of resistance. And it is our desire, as you continue, you will feel able to release any habits of thought that have resulted in your disallowing of the stream. We want you to understand that if it were not for resistant thoughts that you've picked up along your physical trail that are not in vibrational alignment with the stream of well-being, you would be right now a full receiver of that stream. For you are a literal extension of it. You're an extension of it. We are not separate from that well-being. That is, and I think that is so important. It's so important to remember. You know, when we go into a room and we turn the light on, there is no dark switch. There's no dark switch. We don't turn the light off and turn it to dark. We just turn the light off. We get to choose whether or not we are allowing or disallowing light. And there is no dark switch. There's no source of evil. It's whether or not we are allowing the well-being. And boy, are humans good at cutting ourselves off from well-being. And one of the main reasons that we do this is based on our environment. We respond to our environment rather than allowing our environment to respond to us and respond to what we are projecting, what we are doing. And so going forward this week, I want you guys to really think about that, work on that, and remember that this is not about what's going on outside of us. It's about the well-being and the thriving that we attract, that we get to manifest. You know, so even in the situation of this case that we're looking at today, you know, the idea that this negative entity could sort of swing in and pay a visit. The great thing about stuff like this, the great thing about negative entities, because there are great things about them, is that they are and provide such perfect contrast, and they are such great indicators of what we need to move on, what we need to change within ourselves. That's it. That's all they are. They're indicators. They're like if you're driving along and you see your gas tank start to go down and, you know, the needle's kind of pegging, and, you know, you don't pull over to the side of the road and bawl your eyes out because your tank's empty, right? We don't do that. We go, oh, crap, tank's empty. We're going to pull into a gas station and fill up. That's all these negative entities are. They're indicators that something's off, and they will show up. You know, they're in response to one thing and one thing only, which is our own state of being. So they are indicators. That's all they are, to say, hold on, hold on. You know, if I'm here and you're attracting me and you're sitting on my frequency, that's on you. What are you going to do about it? We gotta start to move forward, start to move up that emotional scale. No one can help us with it. We are the compass. We are not the solution. And, as I say, even, you know, investigators and things like that, they are not the solution. They can be the compass. But it's your work. It's your work. That's why people move from house to house to house to house. And, you know, we'll have negative occurrences over and over and over again. And they think, well, it's following me. Well, it's probably not following you. You're probably just receiving on that frequency again and again and again and again. And until you get off that frequency, you can move to, you know, Japan, and you'll find the negative stuff there. So until you break the cycle, until you determine you break the cycle and you say, I'm sick and tired of feeling this way, of doing this over and over and over, until you're at that point where you're sick and tired of yourself, then you're not going to be able to shift yourself on that scale one way or the other. But Jess, I tell you, the fact that you guys only experienced that one thing tells me that you got yourself back up that emotional scale so brilliantly and so perfectly, that it seems like, you know, you guys were really able to cope with this, to deal with it, and move forward in a very, very quick fashion, because it clearly didn't stay. So that's my take on it. I hope this helps everybody today. And as I say, going forward, to remember your own power, remember your own state of manifestation. You can't create in other people's reality, but you can create in yours. And that's all that really matters. And you draw from people your state of expectation and your, you know, and all of that. So when we drop people, or we drop, you know, jobs or whatever it is out of our lives, it's because our vibration has changed. Our vibration has changed. And when our vibration changes, people fall away, people show up. It's just the way it is. We attract what we are on the frequency of. So that being said, we definitely need our affirmations today. Has to happen. So, everybody take a breath. I'm a channel of peace and well-being, and my need for peace is abundantly met. I unconditionally accept, love, and appreciate myself and who I am. I recognize and am grateful for the abundance that is constantly flowing into my life, which I could choose to allow or not. I feel with every breath a sense of peace and love. I help others by maintaining and tending to my connection with Source as much as possible. This well-being is accessible to me, even in a sea of uncertainty. And at this moment, all is well. I am able to liberate myself from my past and live with peace and serenity. I can see and appreciate all the beauty and abundance of the life around me. I am able to embrace love while letting go of fear. And I find peace with the soothing silence of my inner being. Everybody take a breath. Thank you guys for this amazing morning of spiritual health care. Unprecedented morning considering the history that's being made right now. I feel honored and privileged to be able to share it with all of you. And I hope today's message helped with the coming days and will help with the coming days. And I have a funny feeling next week's spiritual health care is going to be a very interesting one. I don't know exactly what the topic will be, but they always show up at the right time at the right moment. So I will see you guys next Wednesday for another episode of Spiritual Health Care. And remember, do whatever brings you joy in the next few days. Turn the TVs off. Turn it off. Turn it off. It's not helping. It's not helping you. Turn it off. You don't have control over that. Leave it alone. You have control over your well-being. So turn it off. Do something that brings you joy. And we will move forward in this, whatever is going on, together with spiritual health care. And I will talk to you guys next week. Stay in peace, everybody. See you later. Bye.